Hello guys, good evening and welcome back to another exciting Doctor Who review. Now last time we did do a review on Inferno, a really tremendous, brilliant story. But now we're moving on to Season 8, introducing us to a new companion and a new villain, played by the legendary Roger Delgado as the Master in Terror of the Autons. One of the best stories to feature the Master, and I think for an introduction to introduce the Master in the story, brilliant. I think the Master is absolutely sensational in this story, really in his complete tremendous charm, and I think his extreme politeness, and I think his acting as a very devilish and very evil character as the Master is so done well to perfection. I think Robert Holmes really did a good job on making the Master so devilish, so serious and so sinister. I just really love the Master's brilliant personality in the story. And I think what makes the story so good is that it's not all about the Autons in the story, it's just how about the Doctor gets used to another Time Lord being on Earth and how he can cope with either getting along with the Master or actually fighting alongside and trying to resist the Master and trying to defeat him at his own game. What I just love the battles where the Doctor and the Master have so many confrontations between each other. Like, they always have so many different talks. They meet up face to face. They always feel like that both of them are one equal powerful threat towards each other. And what I like is that the Doctor sees that feels quite jealous of the Master, and that he may be brilliant at science, he might be better than the Doctor, and therefore the Doctor's quite jealous of the Master, and you can almost see that he really wants to get the best of the Master. And he, he's quite childish and he's being quite arrogant in his character. And I think the Doctor, when he be so arrogant and so rude towards, his personal staff, such as Joe Grant in the beginning episode of where no tea today, I don't want any tea. And so Joe Grant actually felt as a very unwelding character at first, although she didn't really get the good end of the stick in the first episode where the Doctor was being a bit mean to her and calling her names. And so you can almost see how the Doctor was very arrogant and how he didn't like people disturbing him, was very determined with his work, but he didn't like to be disturbed as much as he did. So you can almost see that the Doctor is very friendly, very helpful. But with Joe Grant, I would have to say that with their relationship, they didn't really work out at first. They didn't get the best end of the stick. But I think throughout the entire story, you definitely saw a much deeper development with Joe Grant's character, or her companion essence in the story, and how she kind of felt a very more modern, realistic companion. I can almost felt that Joe Grant, as the companion in the story, felt more of a companion that kind of related to us, and really felt as more of a companion that we would usually ask many questions as a viewer towards the Doctor, like, what is this, Doctor? What does this do? So we ask questions to tell the Doctor what does this do? And the same thing happens with Joe Grant. She asks all these questions as we the viewers may ask towards the Doctor, and she feels as a very solely feminist companion, and she really feels that she's a companion that we can all relate to and how we can understand what the Doctor's talking about. And so that's what I like about Joe Grant in the story. She's quite brilliant sometimes, and sometimes she kind of feels sorry for herself because she doesn't feel like that she's doing the absolute best job and she's trying to oppress the unit people. But I think sometimes she tries to overdo it. But I think what she does for the first story is really, really good. And I really like how the Autons are really sinister in the story. Although they don't appear as much, they really come out with some good products of where they're trying to create some new products and trying to kill people instead of the usual, taking off most of their armor and shooting people. They're having, adapting ways of making plastic products and actually adapting them to kill people. I really like this story. I think there are so many brilliant things I like about this. It's just brilliant, this story. Terror of the Autons, written by Robert Holmes. The Doctor is still trapped on Earth and is unable to use the TARDIS, but the Time Lords are looking out for him. They send a warning that the Master has arrived, and the Doctor soon discovers that the evil Time Lord is working alongside the nesting consciousness, controlling the lethal Auton creatures. Once again, the planet is in terrible danger. Can the Doctor and his new assistant Jo Grant save it before it's too late and the true terror of the Autons is revealed? The true terror of the Autons is one word of where you can say this story must contain some brilliant scenes of where the Autons are really deadly, and of course in episodes 3 and 4 where the action scenes of where the Autons get blown to pieces, they shoot a few soldiers, they chase, you know, the Doctor and Jo around, you know, a distant quarry, and they get attacked by the Brigadier and Captain Yates. And I think all of the soldiers in the story are actually quite good, and I actually quite like all the unit personnel in this story. And I can almost see in my mind, picture this: the Doctor, Jo Grant, the Brigadier, Sergeant Benton, Captain Yates, as one big family. That's what I see in this story. I really see how everybody gets along with each other really well. And I can perfectly see that the Doctor really feels like the father of the family. Like there was certainly respect, even from off camera and also with on camera. You can almost see how the Doctor was more like the father figure within the whole family. And you can also see how Jo Grant was almost like a learner, some, you know, person to look up to the Doctor and, you know, respect him. And there was certainly respect for everybody in the story. Jo Grant merely felt as a companion to really relate to us. A person who merely asks all the questions that the Doctor really, you know, explains with these scientific terms. And Jo Grant's like asking, what's that? You know, how does that work? And so the Doctor really gives out some quite general, you know, terms to use and describe, you know, how his work does and how he works in a certain environment. And all of these, you know, questions that Jo asks are actually quite interesting. But also, it really gives us, the viewers, a chance to relate to Jo Grant's companion, you know, aspect of how she actually feels like one of us, a normal girl asking loads of questions to the Doctor, and Jo really doesn't have any scientific hierarchy like the Doctor does. Like, the Doctor has merely loads and loads of scientific knowledge. And just like Liz Shaw was a really good scientist and she knew loads and loads about science. And I think within season 7, you can almost see that how the Doctor and Liz Shaw were always on the same page and they didn't really sometimes explain stuff in depth properly. But I think with Jo, Jo is morely a person who doesn't really understand science as much as the Doctor, but I can almost see how Jo Grant's trying to do her absolute best and trying to be a great person, a great assistant towards the Doctor. Although Jo Grant may not have the best, you know, qualifications to become a great assistant towards the Doctor, at least she tries her best, and that's what I like. Because she feels like the companion to ask all the questions that merely the viewer, us, would probably ask towards the Doctor, like how does that work and how does that work. And so generally, Jo Grant actually feels like the general companion that we can all relate to. And I really feel that she plays a very fundamental role in every single episode of Terror of the Autons. And I really, really like her, you know, this story. For her first story, I think she does really well as for first story. Really good work from Jo Grant. And as I was saying, with the family aspect, I think all of the unit people, Jo Grant, the Doctor, the Brigadier, I really like of how the kind of arrogance of where the Doctor is talking to the Brigadier of like, oh, you finished? Like, yes, this is very serious, Doctor. And so it was very funny just to see the conversations between how the Doctor was just a very bit boring of where the Brigadier was telling him about what the situation is, and then basically like, oh, are you finished? So it was quite funny just to see a kind of arrogance between them and the relationship between the Brigadier and the Doctor. And they were talking about how the Brigadier and the Doctor's relationship was, and, you know, how they got along quite well, and how they, you know, their relationship got established quite fast within season 7. And then they decided to add like a Moriarty, some kind of villain who may have the insane intellectual intelligence and powerful equal as the Doctor. And it was almost like that Barry Letts and Terrence Stokes were having this discussion of how that the Doctor is almost like Sherlock Holmes and the Brigadier is almost like Dr. Watson, and they really got along really, really well. And then you almost had the Moriarty, a person who really felt more of a powerful intellect, the same person but with different aspects. And this character, the Master, Roger Delgado, is certainly a brilliant actor. And I felt within the story he was a very different Master. From all the Masters that we've had in Doctor Who, I think Roger Delgado, the classic Master, the first Master in Doctor Who, is my favourite, my personal favourite. And I think he's the Master who really understands of how the Master's personality is really established. Very charming, although he may be quite extremely polite towards his other associates, he really comes out as a very sinister and very evil character. That is what the Master is always about. Always trying to be so evil and so manipulative towards everybody else, trying to hypnotise people, kill people in very dangerous and quite sinister death ways and methods. It's quite an unusual story, but such a brilliant story just to showcase the Master's personalities and how he can relate to the Doctor being the Moriarty of Sherlock and Dr. Watson. It's just a really good story. And you can almost see of how the Doctor is also quite jealous of the Master. Like, the Master is even better within mathematical skills, and also he's quite better at the Doctor what he does. But you can almost see how the Doctor is really jealous of the Master, and he wants to get the better of him. He doesn't really feel so embarrassed. He feels like he wants to be the better person, and he tries to be like a one-man band and showcase of his childish attitude, but also his obedience and arrogance towards people who try to disturb him, such as like political people who really get on his nerves so much. I just really like how the Doctor is really good in this story, although he's trying to be quite kind and quite helpful towards Jo Grant, but you can almost see the kind of diversity, similarities between the Master and the Doctor. It's really such an interesting story. I think the personality between them both and the relationships between them both really strengthen up between every single story. And this is my point of view, or my personal opinion. This story feels like the beginning of a plot arc, like in the new series of where you have like maybe Bad Wolf or Torchwood. You can really emphasize that this story is the beginning story of a major plot arc of the relationship between the Master and the Doctor, and how their similarities and differences may be quite different and quite similar. And so, if it makes sense, really. So yeah, I think Season 8 does definitely build up to some major developments between every single story within Season 8. You can almost feel like the development between the Doctor and the Master's relationship really strengthen up. And they always try to slip each other off, trying to create some diversion, and the Doctor's trying to serve the Master, and the Master's trying to always set some devious traps to probably catch the Doctor and see if the Master's quite, better at him and what he does. And basically the Master automatically doesn't feel like a very dangerous threat towards the Doctor. Well, I actually think that he actually feels like a person who just really wants to show the Doctor what he's capable of, and he basically wants the Doctor to accept what he does and how he wants to control of the entire universe or to destroy some civilization. That's what he only cares about, and he just wants the Doctor to appreciate what he does, since he's a renegade Time Lord. But as you know, the Doctor, he's quite arrogant and he always wants things to go his way, and so you can almost see how he tries to set up the Master and tries to create some kind of divert plot effect that could have a negative effect for the Master, like stealing the dematerialization circuit for the Master's TARDIS. And you can really see how the Master's having like a worried face of how the Doctor's tricked him, and how he's put him in a difficult situation of how he's trapped on Earth. And so both of them try to get the best of each other. And I just really like the diverse, conversations, and also the battles that they have between each other. It's really impactful, but yet strong, and really interesting to see the relationship between the Doctor and the Master. I think the Master and the Doctor are absolutely brilliant in this. I really think that even so, the plot is really good. I think the Autons are actually a nice touch to bring back to season 8, as since the original Auton story, Spearhead from Space, had brilliant, great success as John Perry's first story back in 1970, they really saw that the Autons were actually a really interesting threat towards the viewing figures at home, and they really were quite interested, and so they decided to bring the Autons back, but in a much diverse and different way, not only to showcase more of their deadly personality, of their deadly aspect of killing people, but trying to create a different sort of diverse aspect to manipulate and make different products out of plastic and make them come to life and really attack people. And so they can basically make products and adapt them to the human world, and basically people can get killed off by these strange plastic products and not get noticed that the Autons have automatically done this. So it's actually a really ingenious plot line, and I really like the plot in this story. I think most of the products are actually quite hideous, especially with the monster troll in that the Master gave to Mr. Farrell as a gift. And I thought it was quite a very strange gift, and I also liked the kind of diverse personality of how the Master is so charming, so suave and so cool about himself that he becomes quite sinister and quite insisting of, you know, giving gifts to his associates and stuff like that. And so basically he gave this monster troll to Mr. Farrell, the owner of the factory, and completely wanted him to take it as a little gift of his, what he does for the factory. But as the Master, you know, gave him the gift, they said like, I don't want it, and then basically, oh, I insist, and he threw the troll in the back seat, and then he basically turned up the temperature in the car and made it quite hot. And from that moment, when the scenes of where Mr. Farrell was driving back home, and then he was getting quite sweaty in the car, and then suddenly in the back seat, the monster troll actually, you know, got up and actually had a look around and like wanted to move a bit. That was actually a really terrifying scene. And even so, when the scene actually where in the house of where Mr. Farrell put this disgusting creature in his house, and then suddenly the temperature was seriously increased, and the thing was next to a radiator, and it was like on high, and so the temperature increased, and the thing came to life and attacked Mr. Farrell and killed him, and that was absolutely terrifying when I watched it. I just really think that there were some terrifying scenes in the story. And also another example I have to say is that the plastic chair of where Dermot really doesn't really like the Master, and then the Master tells Dermot to sit down in the chair, and the Master does it with so brilliant authority. He does it so well, and he makes people so intimidated by his appearance. Like, sit down! He really gets the better of people. And when the chair started to move, it tried to suffocate Mr. Dermot, and then suddenly his entire body was shown on TV as he suffocated by the plastic chair. It was absolutely terrifying to watch it. But yet again, really interesting, and how the Master doesn't like intolerance, but he really likes the way of watching death and see how people suffer and how he commits deaths towards other humans. And like, he really likes how this was one scene I really like from the Master. Death is always more frightening when it strikes invisibly. And so that is another key scene of where Jo actually looked inside the plant, or the daffodil, and then suddenly had this basic like plastic film over around her mouth, and she couldn't really remove it. And it was basically like a very terrifying scene of where she could actually suffocate within like another 2 minutes or so. Most of the terror in this story really helped with most of the story development. If there weren't any sort of terror in this, then this story would have been a bit lower in the ratings, because I certainly have to give this story a 9.5 because of the terror. And I think the terror intervention with the plastic products introducing the way that they can come to life by certain different types of elements like heat, short radio signals, and intervention of human surfaces. And so it's a really interesting story how these plastic products can be adapted to human earth climates and environments, and it's really interesting. So yeah, so definitely the products are definitely certain to keep out, and I think the Doctor in episode 4 really figures out on what the Master's actually planning. And even so, I like this story only for reasons why is that the Master really wanted to succeed and trying to conquer the Earth with the Autons in this. But what I like about the Autons is that the Autons, they didn't wait for the Master to come back to the truck or anything like that. They wanted to move on because the Autons, they don't have a leader of their own. They're not controlled by the Master at all. And so you can almost see of how the Autons can be quite difficult and how mysterious they are, because they can almost turn their back onto the Master and really go against him. And within the final scenes of episode 4, where the Autons are destroying the soldiers and the Doctor's up in the in the radio station of where he's trying to stop the Master from bringing an invasion fleet of the Autons down to Earth and conquering the Earth, the Doctor tries to persuade the Master to change his mind. And this was the first scene of where the Master was actually deciding to perhaps maybe change his mind and actually work alongside the Doctor and stop the Autons from coming to Earth and destroying the entire Earth. And so he was actually, and basically the Doctor was like saying, do you really think that that thing will basically, work alongside you with us? And then basically the Master completely changed his mind and started to prevent the entire invasion force from coming to Earth and destroying the Earth. So that was a really interesting scene. And then suddenly after that, I think the Master tried to escape, tried to, escape from the Doctor. And I think the Master does this brilliantly. He basically comes out of the truck and basically he tries to shoot, Captain Yates, but then Captain Yates shoots him, instantly on the ground. I think, we've got him, sir. And then the Doctor's like, don't be too sure. And then suddenly, where we see, the Master on the floor dead, the Doctor notices, a basically rubber mask and pulls it off, and it's Rex, the same person who is actually the news reporter in The Masters of Death, played by Michael Wisher, the same actor who plays Davros in Genesis of the Daleks. And I keep referencing this actor, and I think he appears in most of the classic series, stories, and I think he's absolutely one actor to keep an eye out, because he is Davros in Genesis of the Daleks. I really like this story, and I think of how the Master escapes so easily in episode 4, of where Rex is appeared to be the Master inside a Master suit, and the Master escapes in the truck or the vehicle and escapes, off Earth. But don't worry, but the Master is actually trapped on Earth because the Doctor actually stole a dematerialization circuit of the Master's TARDIS, and so the Master can't go anywhere because he's trapped on Earth. So you can almost see how the Doctor can always prevent the Master from leaving Earth. So you can always see that how maybe the Doctor doesn't always let the Master escape, and how the Master is always one step ahead of the Doctor. But no, the Doctor is always one step ahead of the Master, and so they are always both equal to each other, and how they sometimes like to get the best of both of each other within their battles between each story. It's really interesting to see their relationships grow stronger and stronger within each story. It's really, really interesting, and I really liked the diverse and brilliant relationship diversities and similarities that they have within each episodes. It's really, really interesting, and I think the story is really fantastic. I think just Roger Delgado, his sinister stare is absolutely defining and mind-blowing. I have to be honest with you, I love the Master in this, and I think this is his best story to introduce his character and his role as being such a suave and very charming character, and then even from underneath that charm you can feel that this person is such a dark-hearted, evil, sinister character that I absolutely love to bits. That's why I love that he's my favourite Master in Doctor Who history. I like Missy as, she's also quite good because she's a time lady, and that's quite different. But I do like his sinister aspect in the story. And also with all the other stories that he does throughout season 8, I think he's absolutely brilliant. Also, I mentioned about how the companions of Jo Grant, of how she can relate to, us being on TV and basically asking the Doctor all these different questions, and it's quite different from us of how Liz Shaw is quite a scientist and she knows what the Doctor's talking about. But with Jo Grant is way different, because she plays a much fundamental role in these episodes of where she gets under some hypnotic trance from the master, and she gets hypnotized quite easily because she's kind of at first a weak character of the companion side, but although she asks a lot of questions, she is actually a really good companion. Jo Grant, she's actually really good, and you can really see how her development and her relationship between the Doctor gets stronger and stronger within each story. And I think this may not be the best story to completely fully establish the Doctor and Jo's relationship. And so you can really see of how they really get along with each other in like the 3rd episode or so. And although they may not have the best start in episode 1 of where the Doctor plays maybe some insulting words onto Jo Grant, and so she doesn't really feel like that she's worthy enough to be around here, and so she feels quite sorry for herself. And I actually understand of how we may not have the complete brilliant qualifications that the Doctor has, and so you can really see of how Jo Grant's trying to do an ultimately best to keep up with the Doctor and his scientific terms, and like, how does this work and what does that do? And so she's trying to do an absolute best, but I think her fundamental role in the story of asking the questions, and it's the same thing of how we would react to the Doctor if we were a companion of the Doctor, and how we would ask the questions. And so Jo Grant actually is like a mirror image of us as a companion, and that is a real key element I like about the story. And also, I think all the characters are really good in this. I think that I like the family aspect of the Doctor, Jo, the Brigadier, Sergeant Benson, and Captain Yates. I haven't mentioned Captain Yates yet. The new Sergeant leader with the Brigadier, as well as with Sergeant Benson. I actually quite like Captain Yates, although he tries to make cocoa with the Doctor's Bunsen burner. Like, you should never do that. Never touch the Doctor's Bunsen burner if you're trying to make cocoa. Don't follow Captain Yates. I mean, Captain Yates is actually really good. Although it basically feels like more like the boyfriend for Jo Grant, but I really feel that Captain Yates actually feels like a very good soldier with the Brigadier and also with Sergeant Benson. So he feels like one of the group with Sergeant Benson and also the Brigadier within the unit side, and with the soldiers and with the grenades. He's actually a good fighter, to be honest, and I really like his fundamental personality of how he can really understand with the Doctor, and that he can empathise with the Doctor. Although they may not get along as well, quite well, I can really see how Captain Yates is trying to catch up with, being, aside with Benson, trying to take charge, and you can see how he's quite, respective, and how he understands of how the Brigadier is trying to do his absolute best. But I think Captain Yates is certainly really good in the story, and I think everybody in the story is really good as well. I think the fight scenes are absolutely really well diverted, and I think the action scenes are where the Autons try to shoot the Doctor and Jo are actually quite good, and I like episode 3 because I think most of the cliffhangers in the story are actually quite good. My favourite was actually episode 3 cliffhanger of where the Doctor's actually getting strangled by the phone wire. It's really intimidating, quite scary as well, of how these plastic products actually come to life, and they really have a fundamental role within the entire plot. The Autons are certainly really good, really powerful, and how they're completely a real invincible, alien life form. And I really like how their creepiness really happens within all of the cliffhangers as well. Certainly with episode 2 of where the Doctor and Jo, they're in the police car, and then suddenly they rip open, the policeman's face, and they realise it's an Auton. Really scary. And also there was one scene of where this is actually one scene where I actually thought the Doctor almost got shot by an Auton, where the Doctor's trying to open the safe, basically opens it, an Auton's there, and the Brigadier was almost about to get shot, but instead he just ducked, and the Doctor just slammed the door shut. And basically, they're very persistent, aren't they? And so it's I was like, oh my word, that was so close. Yeah, so basically you could see so many terrifying scenes in the story, and also you can really understand with the personality, contrasts between the Master and the Doctor, but also with Jo Grant and the Doctor as well. And so I really love this story. I think it's certainly really well contrasted, and I think the acting is certainly well good from all the actors, Jo Grant especially, her, and also obviously Roger Delgado. Brilliant, sensational acting for his first story in Doctor Who. Absolutely brilliant. And I have to say, I have to give this story a 9.6 out of 10 because it's certainly really fantastic, and I really like the diverse similarities and the relationship between the Doctor and the Master, almost like the Moriarty and Sherlock Holmes kind of battle. I really like this story, and I think the acting with the Autons and also with everybody else in the story, it's actually really good. The Brigadier has some good scenes. Sergeant Benton, I love Benton, and I think he should basically appear more times within the classic stories, and I think he does within season 8, and I think Captain Yates was certainly good in this, and I think the Autons are certainly them were really good, and also introducing the plastic products and how they can adapt to, you know, human, you know, climates, and how can they become a lethal threat towards the human race, like the daffodils, the monster troll, the plastic chair. All these other plastic products can actually become quite lethal towards mankind when they are adapted to human climates. And so it's a really interesting story, and I really liked this entire story. The plot development, the characterization, and I think the action scenes are certainly well developed. I think it's a really overall fun, enjoying, and real brilliant story. Really fantastic. Anyway guys, thank you for watching for my review on Terror of the Autons. I hope you have enjoyed it. Please do give a like, but also comment your views on this story, and please do subscribe to my channel if you are new, because I've certainly enjoyed this story. And just before I go, I do have one concern over my channel. If I don't do a video for maybe one or 2 weeks or so, it means I'm just basically like taking a break, trying to get back to my roots, because I feel like that this YouTube channel is becoming a bit of a stress for me, because although I love this YouTube channel to bits and I love creating videos for you guys, I feel like I'm trying to create and trying to diverse my work between my normal life and college life and with this YouTube life as well, and so it's becoming quite difficult for me, and I'm coming in at a stressful time where I need to be more focused with my work and be less focused with YouTube. And so I hope that you guys do understand that what I'm going through at the moment. So if I don't do any videos for a week or two, it means I'm just basically taking a break, getting used to my college life and my real life, and just basically taking a break from YouTube and making these videos. But when I do make these videos, I do these videos with heart and soul, and I really mean my opinions to all of you, and I really hope that you are still continuing with my YouTube channel. And please certainly hit that subscribe button, because I'm going to do these videos as much as I can, and I really want to do these videos in my own time, because it's my YouTube channel, and I really feel like if I work at the pace I'm at, I will deliver the best possible videos for you guys. And so guys, if you do understand what I'm talking about, it just means that I'm just basically trying to take as many breaks as I possibly can and trying to relax myself, because the more I stress about making these reviews, the more stressed I am for making these reviews. If you understand me, basically if you get more stress from making YouTube videos, you can understand of how much pressure you're under. And so that's how I feel at the moment. But guys, I hope you have enjoyed this review, and I hope you have understand what I've just spoken about, of how YouTube is becoming a bit of stress towards me, of trying to make brilliant videos for you every single week. I'm trying to do my best on how to make my videos brilliant, but I'm going to make these videos in the pace that I can, and I hope you guys really understand what I'm going through at the moment. And so guys, thank you for watching for this review on Terror of the Autons, and the next review, which will be The Mind of Evil, which I haven't watched in like quite a long time, so it's going to be an interesting story to review. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye for now.